I wanted to share with you today some of the books and comics that I read when I recently had to take some time off because I got really exhausted and kind of lost my way with my artwork. I feel like I really was reminded of the restorative power of books, comics, stories over the past week or so. If you're new to this channel, my name is Sam and I'm an artist living in the northwest of England, which is where I grew up, and I really like to make comics or just more loosely like narrative work, zines, and I'm kind of in the middle of making a comic at the moment, the first issue of my first proper comic. I didn't really intend to make a big like 40-ish page comic as my first project. I've been really in the past pretty good at starting small. When I first did zines, I made a really small zine. When I first did bigger drawings, I tried to really practice first. You know, I've always, ever since I decided to pursue art, which was taking quite a different path for me about 5 years or so ago. I was really starting from scratch. I didn't know what I was doing, but I've always tried to start small. But with this comic, the story kind of ran away from me. It's called Toasting the Machine and it's a soft sci-fi comic that, now that I've had some time to rest, I do still feel good about. I do still think it's a story that I care about, but I got all a bit lost in things. I got lost in just feeling a bit dispirited is probably a good word for it, where like you just start to feel disconnected from why you're doing things or the drive forward. And I said in a Q&A once that when you've lost your drive, you've got to try and hold on to like what it is, like why you're doing it and what that drive is. And I feel like actually books really help me to rediscover that. I've said before that TV is one of my absolute favourite things, and I did watch TV as well, and they are a form of storytelling that I absolutely adore. But there was something about this week and a half where I finally had proper time off and stopped, that I feel allowing myself to spend a lot of time with actually the kind of stories that I tend to tell and like the kind of thing that I want to make really helped me to realign with like what I want to do and why I'm doing it. So yeah, I thought I'd go through just some of the things that happened and some of the things that I read. I just want to say as well, I only really mentioned that I was taking time off on my Instagram, so I apologise that I just kind of disappeared on here. But yes, I just got really worn out. My previous vlog, I re-edited it about 4 times over a number of days and nearly threw my laptop out the window. It was getting that bad. And I was just really struggling. It just didn't feel right. I feel like it feels right or it doesn't, and it didn't feel right. And I was just really exhausted. I was worried that I was going to go into autistic burnout. I actually think in the end I avoided that. And I don't want to diminish what autistic burnout is, because generally it's not the kind of thing that you recover from mainly like in a week or so. I actually think I just kind of had a meltdown for a couple of days where I was really emotionally dysregulated. And then I feel I was just really exhausted. I'm quite privileged for the fact that I probably was able to immediately rest from my work because I work for myself. So I was able to not head into autistic burnout, which is quite a serious thing, that it can really impact people very heavily, and it can be something people are stuck in for months, even years, and it can greatly impact their life. So I feel very lucky that I was able to avoid that, I feel. And so we're not really talking about autistic burnout here, we're talking about really just restoring from tiredness or just like a loss of drive, more specifically, because I don't want to diminish what that is. So firstly, one of the things that I really enjoyed reading was the second volume of Yokohama Kaidashi Kikou, I always say it badly, which is by Hitoshi Ashinamo. As I always say, I'm learning Korean. I've been really rusty on my Korean though. but I'm not good at Japanese. If you don't know, this is a manga that was originally started in actually around the years I was born, so like the late 1990s. It's basically about actually an android, a humanoid looking android that runs a little cafe and kind of just goes about their life in a very kind of far future, which is kind of, it seems kind of post-apocalyptic in some ways, not necessarily full-on apocalypse, but like a lot of stuff has definitely happened, but you don't fully get to know, like I haven't so far, you don't fully get to know like what has happened or how this world works. It's just quite quiet and desolate, but equally very peaceful, and so it's kind of like a strange mix. It's really interesting, but it's mostly kind of slice of life. This manga to me is a real like art inspiration, and I think when I'm reading it, it really gets my imagination and my artistic curiosity going, because I feel like it reminds me of the kind of artwork I want to make. And the thing that I think is unique about the artwork in this manga is how much space there is. Like, the panels are often quite large. For example, you may have panels that are like, oh no. It's like, for example, you have panels that are fairly large, fairly far apart. The text is fairly large. And the artist will often draw like one big figure, or you know, take a whole page for just one thing. There's a really nice like colour one in this one, yeah, where she's dancing. Like this, for example, there's just a few bits in the manga where it's in colour, but a lot of it's in just black and white, obviously. But for example, you know, it's hard for it to see, but like, I just think like that, for example, like, it's such a lovely drawing. The colours are so lovely as well. There's a lot of space and a lot of breathing room, and that actually like adds to the atmosphere of the manga as well. And what I would say about it is it doesn't actually really have a set narrative, like a story that goes from point A to point B to point C or whatever. It's more like little snippets of a life. It's very slice of life, and yet it immerses you in that. And yeah, I feel like I needed to be reminded at this time that you don't necessarily have to write a big grand story to put something across, to put something meaningful across. Because especially in this volume, actually, compared to the first one, there were some really lovely little moments. Like, it's not, you don't need a big complex narrative to put across a feeling or a moment of something. And I think that's something I needed to be reminded of. Because after I finished the first issue of this comic, I'd really like to make something smaller, but that maybe hits on a real issue. But like, I think it can get really complicated. For example, I really like to talk about mental health issues and like to draw from my experiences, but it's like my experiences are such a mess of tangled knots, and I really need to try and just take a small piece out of it rather than trying to assess the whole thing as a whole, because it's really challenging to put across such a complicated thing and to kind of not make it too overwhelming for you and for the reader as well. So I do feel like quite a few of the stories I engaged with over this time reminded me of that, reminded me of the power of, you know, of all kinds of narratives. I've always really liked short narratives because I think they can have so much power in simplicity and in being straightforward in what they're trying to put across. And I feel like I'd forgotten that a little bit, and I got a bit lost in longer narratives or more overwhelming big ideas and things like that. Or just like worrying that, you know, I didn't know where to go next at all. And probably I was being quite critical of myself as well. Because it's even like stuff like the videos, you know, I sometimes look back at that video that got quite a lot of views, and when I was in that really negative mindset, I was really intensely like, you know, there's so much I should have said in that video, and there's groups of people that I feel I just totally ignored, and I should have put across a more nuanced point, and all these things I wish I'd done. And I had no idea that it was gonna be seen by that many people. I had a few hundred followers and I was getting a few hundred views at that time. So I never really thought to think that deeply about what I was putting across in that video. I just thought in that moment I was sharing a little bit of just a perspective on how your life and the structure of your life can lead to being a bit more solitary than other people may be. Not just in a physical sense, but just in a sense of having any connections. Because, for example, I really value online friendships, and that was something I was like, I wish I talked about that. But it's like, I think I built it up in my head as if it wasn't just one video in my past that I can learn from and move forward with. Just like we try and learn and move forward every day, because I spoke about this to my therapist and he said it really well, that like it's the difference between reflecting and learning from something and just getting really lost in intensely negatively criticising yourself in a way that just leaves you stuck and doesn't actually achieve anything. And he has this phrase that he often says to me where he says, it's sort of like, okay, and what now? And I think he knows that these really short little phrases work well for me, and it stays in my head and I repeat it all the time. Because it's true, like going, okay, that was that, and what am I going to do now? How am I going to learn from this? How am I going to move forward? And I think that's true of everything, because I think I was reflecting a lot on myself as a person as well, wanting to like make sure that I'm open to criticism as a person too, and my philosophies and my thoughts and my views, like how we try and, as people, move forward. But it's true as people as well. If we get too lost in just really negatively seeing all the worst things about ourselves all the time, we can't try and move forward and learn and do better. And I feel like we become obsessed with this concept of this future perfect version of ourselves, which isn't possible because we can't be perfect, but we become obsessed with this concept that only they can do things right, and anything we've done in the past or that we're doing in the present isn't good enough. I don't know if that makes any sense. But yeah, speaking of philosophy, this is a book that I literally just finished this morning, which was A Prayer for the Crown Shy by Becky Chambers, which is the sequel to this book, A Psalm for the Wild Built. But you could read them as standalones as well, just to say. This one you would need to read the first one to read this one, but you could just read this one if you wanted. Like it's got a complete ending to it. I first read this, I think a couple of years ago now, and they're both really short, digestible reads that I really love. This was quite inspiring to me at the time with my work, and particularly the solar punk aspect. If you don't know, solar punk is kind of like a vision of the future where the world works more sustainably with the environment and we live in harmony with it. We still have technology, but that technology is very integrated with nature. I think hopeful is a word that comes to mind when you read these books. And I think it kind of makes sense that I ended up reading this at this time. I got given this for Christmas, and at first I thought it would be the first thing I read, the first thing I want to have a go at, because this is probably one of my absolute favourite books. In fact, if you had to say what is your favourite book right this minute, I would say this. But I'm really bad at picking complete favourites because I rarely have like one favourite of things. I don't like having to say what my one favourite is, but I do. This is very, very up there. Because of its whole atmosphere and the fact that it is light-hearted and funny, but it is also so philosophical and interesting, and I think it asks important questions, and I don't know, I just think it works with my brain. And so yeah, I think it's quite serendipitous, is that the word, that I ended up reading this now, because I feel like I needed it now. And yeah, it reminded me that the work, like being an artist like this, telling stories, it is hard in a weird way, in like this abstract way, and it also reminded me just of hopefulness and of community. This one is quite interesting, like without spoiling anything. This one the characters are kind of on their own, and in this one there's more community aspect, and that's really fascinating. And I think in one breath this is really refreshing because I feel it puts across this vision of the future that, oh my gosh, I would love to live in, and I hope, you know, my wildest dreams could be a reality. But also, I don't know, it's just very human, and it's not too complicated, and yet it really envelops you in the world. And again, it's a reminder, you don't need thousands of pages necessarily to put across something meaningful. And I think I needed that reminder, because I think what this comic I'm making has taught me is that I'm not ready for hundreds of pages. I'm not ready for a big graphic novel. It's just, honestly, it's still just too hard. Like, I'm just not good enough at it yet, and I think that's just okay to admit. I can't draw people consistently well enough yet. I want to study drawing bodies more. I want to study landscapes. There's so much that I need to do. But equally, I do want to tell stories, and I don't want to put it off for years because I don't feel good enough yet, because I don't know, I don't feel like that's wise. I don't know. The way the world is now, nothing is guaranteed, and I feel people need stories, even though I kind of lost sight of that for a while. I think I've said a few times I have this thing about feeling like I'm not doing anything that's really any help to anyone, but I had to remind myself that that isn't true, because just during this past week or so, I was restored so much by these books and by stories. Even with stuff like this, which is more just fun stuff, like SpyXFamily, which is a manga, and there's an anime of it as well, which is really, really popular. It's very, very well known, this. It's basically about a spy who needs to do a certain case where he needs to get into like a prestigious school. So he kind of recruits like an orphan and and a wife, but they're all kind of hiding things from each other. So like the orphan is telepathic, so she can read minds, and the wife is an assassin. So it's kind of interesting because they're all kind of interesting characters that are keeping things from each other and whatever. It's just fun. It was escape, you know, it was an escape on the difficult days. It was really easy to read, and yeah, I just enjoyed it. And I think I can see myself watching it because I've got Crunchyroll at the moment, so I could watch it, and yeah, reading more of it. And yeah, like, it's got found family. It had some sweet moments and some meaningful moments. Again, even in maybe a manga that I didn't honestly expect to have that. I didn't expect it to have any kind of emotional weight necessarily. I just thought it would be fun, which it is, but it has that too. And yeah, maybe sometimes, like I just think, let's not put down the value of people being comforted, of something that allows them to have an escape for a moment, something that allows them to just step outside of their life for a minute, because life is hard. Life for so many people is hard in many, many ways, in ways that might just feel like a day-to-day annoyance, to things that are like absolutely horrendous, you know. And these stories, creativity, poetry, all these kind of things, they give people some relief for a minute, you know. And yeah, I wanted to remind myself of the value of that. And I'm glad that I did. So just to go back to this book briefly, towards the end there's a discussion about how the robot finds that, to keep things quite vague, in discussions with the community, quite a lot of people discuss things that are quite what the robot calls esoteric or philosophical, things that are quite kind of psychological and abstract, like companionship, drive, passion, purpose. And I thought that was a really interesting phrase, esoteric and philosophical. If you don't know, for people especially who aren't primarily English speakers, esoteric kind of means like stuff that's quite specific, quite hard to, like, only people who maybe know about this subject or know about this experience will be able to understand it. It can be quite it can be quite difficult to understand, basically, something that's quite specific. And as per usual, I wrote a few words, just a few words, I mean, honestly, over the past few weeks, I wrote quite a lot, but it was very all over the place, whereas I feel this is like a very small paragraph that summed up how I felt. Now I feel that I've got through a lot of my exhaustion, and I've calmed down and I'm in the nice bit where I'm kind of ready to gently go back into things now. And I kind of identified really what I feel was the issue I was having. Is this, like, perhaps this is what it is to be in the business of the esoterical and philosophical. It's understandable to grow tired when chasing things that do not want to be held or named, that shy away from being revealed. They are unwilling to be moored down fully in the concrete. They can only be gotten near to, like quietly approaching a wild bird and trying not to be noticed, for the fleeting seconds before it flits off and is impossibly out of reach again. How can anyone expect to work like this and not sometimes become adrift and dispirited or stuck in fears around their own inadequacies? We must take time to stop and remind ourselves of why we sought out this strange path in the first place. So yeah, that's definitely the shortest of the little writings I've done, but I do feel like it summed up the full circle of where my thoughts came back to in the end. Because I feel like, honestly, my drive, it is somehow getting near, like, the things that are hard to talk about, or that aren't talked about, or that are almost impossible to put into words. The things that I'm struggling now to put into words because it's really challenging. You know, the things that go on in the, like, recesses of our minds and that are part of life but so hard to put words to. And that all sounds a bit grand for someone who is making, you know, soft sci-fi comics and drawing dogs and stuff, but it's true. Like, that is what the root of my work is, actually. I really don't like that belief that kind of, like, cute art isn't meaningful, because why is it that, you know, okay, people take it seriously when it's in the Tate Modern and there's a massive paragraph explaining why it's so meaningful, but when it's like a comic or, you know, a piece of work with a rabbit character or something, people suddenly think it can't mean anything. Well, it does, and it impacts people really deeply. And in fact, a lot of stories for many, many years that have really got into people's hearts are told through, you know, children's cartoons, children's books, animal characters, you know, all these kind of things that are probably put down sometimes as just being cute decorative illustrations. But, you know, it's not the case, and in fact those things can be even more powerful because they're often more accessible. But that's kind of a bigger question. You don't want to get me started about modern art because it's a complicated topic that I have thoughts on. But yeah, this was kind of quite an unplanned ramble yet again. But yeah, the world's, as usual, the world is very complicated. A lot of awful, terrible things are happening. And we find our way in that somehow. And it's strange. It's a very strange world. And speaking of that, please be reminded that in links in my bio, you can help people in you know where, going through awful, awful, awful things, unimaginable to me, and it's really beyond dispiriting, to use that word again, to see how the world is reacting to it and how little anything is being done. Maybe, I think now more than ever, with all that's going on in the world, we really have to try and look out for each other in any way we can. And that's that's my and what now. My and what now is, I'm going to try and tell meaningful stories. I'm going to try and look out for other people and do things that may help them. And I'm going to step away from myself in that sense of getting lost in criticism and stuff, because it's a waste of time and it doesn't help me and it doesn't help anyone else. So my and what now is to try and keep moving forward as best I can, and to keep informed and to keep learning and to keep being willing to be malleable and to change for the better. yes. I think that's as best as I can do for now. So yeah, what's your and what now, I suppose. I hope this might have been, goodness knows, interesting. Comforting? I don't know. I just wanted to say hello, really, because I haven't posted in a while. It's kind of like I've not seen you all for a while if I don't make a video. This communication, it matters to me, and I really value you all very much, and I really appreciate you watching these videos and supporting me in any way, and for all your kind words that you often send me. It's very, it helps me a lot, so thank you so much. And yes, on a more level path in the little art room for me, and I guess that's it for now. And I am going to film in 1080p from now on, because I'm over 4K. I'm over the 4K life, alright? So that's that. And it just doesn't matter, does it? It doesn't matter. I'm over it, who cares? So let's move forward together. So yeah, till next time. Thank you so much. Thank you.